district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
It is Tuesday, June 2nd, and welcome to another installment of the Half Millie Billies on the GOAT District Podcast Network. On tonight's show, we brought on some guests to help as therapists to work through the existential crisis that I'm personally having over the naming and the branding of the Half Millie Billies. Because tonight we are reviewing a tournament that is the Half Millie Billies divided by 100. That's right. Tonight we're reviewing the KFFSC Checkered Flag Tournament. Top prize $5,000. But look, guys, that's okay. Half Millie Billies isn't a dollar value. It's a state of mind, a state of taking down a tournament. So on this episode, our guests are actually going to help review the KFFSC limited run 96 entrant tournament leading up to the Kentucky drafts, their bigger events. So when JD and Dan let me take over the Half Millie Billies brand, we agreed that we would hit the football guys, obviously. They made events. Everyone wants to hear about those. That much was obvious. But when we took a look at some of the other tournaments, high stakes drafts, redraft, we obviously saw these Kentucky ones and we saw some C. So tonight's guests, they really started to hit the Kentucky drafting hard. They have done a couple of pods already. They threw down a challenge. And early in the stage of drafting, call it, still wasn't going to enter. Wanted to learn more before I got involved. I wanted like the fantasy mojo of the Kentucky drafts. But then I kept seeing one spot open in the draft that they threw down a challenge for. The spot didn't close. Ultimately had to jump in, had to close it. So we're going to review that draft, the KFFC, see how it translates to the FFPC, and then we're going to go through our teams and compare them. So let me intro our guests. Let me start. One of tonight's guests is the host of multiple podcasts of his own, focusing on high-stakes tournaments and Dynasty. He writes for DLF Football. Get stuck in a conversation with him too long this offseason, and you may accidentally be drafting Kune Nwangu in the second round of your Dynasty drafts. The other guest is podcast hosting partner. He's a veteran of the high-stakes fantasy football, the shark that guides you through the rest of the shark-infested waters. And if you ask him which wallet is his, this Jules would tell you it's the one that says bad motherfucker on it. Collectively, they won over 13 FFPC tournament league titles, including 4 main events. And last year, they took down first place in their division in the Draft Sharks Invitational. Remember what I said about the Shark Guide, and third overall on the tournament. On my list of influential bands for this podcast, these guys are up there. In fact, once you finally hear their names, you should absolutely pause this podcast and subscribe to theirs. It's Scott Connor at Charles Chill FFB and Jay Reed at Packers153 of the Chasing the Helmet podcast. Boys, welcome to the show. Why don't you guys get talking so I can take a nap and a drink of water? Well,
thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here.
This was awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining. I think this is going to be fun. Love that you guys threw down the challenge for the Kentucky draft. But happy that you guys are doing this year too. It seemed like a lot of fun. We didn't talk pre-show, but I think Farrell LA does a good job of call it community outreach and trying to get people involved and making sure he's doing a good job of connecting. So I really appreciated the Kentucky love almost immediately upon joining in the tournament. How'd you guys feel about that?
Oh, Farrell loves to sell. I've been talking to him. We've been texting back and forth. He's great. He puts on a great show in Kentucky. Scott and I were thinking about jumping in last year. We didn't do it this year. He said, you know what, let's be a little bit diverse in our high stakes leagues. We've already, like you said, knocked down 2 KFFSC checkered flags. They're a blast. They're unique. They're different from the FFPC. Though we're pivoting to the FFPC shortly. Okay, we're doing both, but we got a taste of it, and we're going to be doing more checkered flags too, 2 more leagues. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a different fantasy fun overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Lot of passion there.
Farrell came on our show last week and wanted to make sure we got that checkered flag filled. And, he was like, hey, you guys want me to come on the show, talk about Kentucky? And if anyone listened to our first Kentucky draft, we're sitting there in the middle of the draft going, how do the playoffs work here again? What bye weeks matter? How's this work? And we kind of sounded, like we didn't read the ruals because we really didn't read the rules.
He didn't read the rules, yeah.
Exactly. But he, I'd never talked to Farrell before.
Go ahead, Scott. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I'd never talked to Farrell before, other than I met him in Vegas 2 years ago. He gave me a business card. He's like, hey, if you're ever near Kentucky, hit me up, come and draft at Kentucky. I'm like, you know what? We'll do that. Then we didn't do it last year. And we talked about it. Jay and I talked about it. But with COVID, we weren't really sure about what the schedule was going to look like. So we didn't add anything new. And then first time I talked to Farrell since Vegas was when he's on the podcast. And he came on right as we were starting. So I didn't have any pre-show interaction with him. And by the end, he's going, hey, I know you live in Columbus. You're only 3 hours away. I expect you to be here and here and here. Like, let's just draft more and more and more. And part of me's going, you know what? This guy is a good salesman. Like, he can put on an event, and if I'm within driving distance where I can just get up and go, I'll be there. So, yeah, I got to give kudos to him for definitely bringing new players in.
He's got that ABC, the always be closing. I got to not call him. Yes. I got to not be involved. I can't be texting him because if I do, I'm inevitably going to end up in more drafts. So I'm going to have to just avoid him. Do his drafts, but avoid him personally because otherwise you're going to end up with a bigger portfolio than you ever thought. So you guys have partnered up here. I think the last 3-4 years, but I want you guys to correct me. I want to learn a little bit more about you guys' partnership, your origin story, if you will. And again, Scott, you just mentioned it. You guys have done a couple pods. You guys did a live draft pod. Your live draft content is awesome. And again, as I mentioned, make sure you go back and listen to their Kentucky spots. One live, actually 2 live drafts over both checkered flags that you guys did. My credit to you guys before you get in the origin story is you work out your picks live much better than I would ever. Now, you can still hear it seeping through, right? Like, I think if you listen to the last one, there was Jay who was actively rooting against DeAndre Swift being available at you guys' next pick. That was delightful. Scott, you not wanting the second quarterback. There's those discussions. I got to say, if I'm recapping my drafts, which we do with Theo, who's another GOAT, I mean, it's after the dust is settled and I've talked myself into, okay, Theo, that was a good pick, or he's talked himself into something I did. But somehow you guys are managing it all live. So I want to hear the origin story, but then I want to kind of hear how you guys are able to manage your own picks and your frustrations. Because obviously, not to work a divide because there is none, but you guys are both headstrong people when you guys want your picks. But obviously, there's a style and a partnership that works there.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the origins, Andrew. I mean, years ago, I joined a best ball league. It was an IDP, not my niche at all. And Scott happened to be in that league. And through the course of the season, I was really impressed with his knowledge of the fantasy football players, his stats. And I was looking for a teammate to draft in Vegas and to play high stakes with me. So in the chat, I slowly, talked about the FFPC, showed him the rules, not the fees, because I didn't want to scare him away because it's high stakes. Finally, we got to that. And when I shared the fees with him, Scott simply told me, well, how much we're going to win. And I knew, I knew it was nice. I mean, I knew right then and there, this is the guy I want to team with. He's more focused on winning than what he has to lose. And we've been pretty successful. This is our 5th year together overall.
Okay, nice. I
mean, the name, Chasing the Helmet, I've been playing high stakes since 2010. I've been chasing that damn helmet for 10 years. I want to scratch it off my bucket list. Maybe Scott can help me win it. But
that's the main event tournament champion.
That's helmet, correct. Right? Everyone knows about the $500,000, yeah. But they give a gorgeous helmet as well. And I'd like to put that on my mantle piece one day. And Scott has agreed to let me have it if we ever pull it off. But it was Scott's idea for the podcast, and it was last year. We were in Vegas. He said it was a good way for us to connect and stay in touch, because then we would fall off, and then we'd only pick it up maybe in May the following year. So I agreed to that, even though we're sharing stats, we're sharing strategies and that type of thing on a podcast. So we went for it. We decided to do it, and basically, it's a podcast where, we don't have hot takes. We're not telling, when there's no call-ins, we're not telling you who to sit or start.
Yeah.
You're just coming in here and you're following the ups and downs of two high-stakes players through their fantasy season, simply put. I mean, we're sharing strategies, we're sharing what players we want, but we're putting up our hard-earned money to back up those strategies and picks. So there's something to that. So listeners, can take away what they want from it. Okay, like you just said about Swift and the differences that we have, and we work it out. But at the end of the day, that's what we decide to do. This is how we conduct our drafts. We do live drafts, and it's fun. We stay together, and somehow over this our second year, over the last 2 years, we've managed at least to keep it, interesting and ongoing through our drafts. Though it is sometimes it is difficult at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to Jay with the origin story, this was a $35 IDP league that, I was actually the commissioner of, and we were just looking for a couple owners to jump in and fill a team. And it was just happenstance that the Green Bay Packers were there, and Jay likes the Packers. Otherwise, if the Packers would have been taken, Jay would have never jumped into the league. Would have never met Jay.
Oh, got it.
Probably would have never even. So it truly was happenstance. And obviously everyone knows me from Dynasty and Chill. So I'm always doing something content-wise, podcasting. So when I had the idea to do another podcast, I was like, Jay, we can make this a different podcast than what's out there. Because one of the things people know me for is I listen to 25 hours of podcasts a day. And I'm listening on 2.5 speed. So it's just constantly like this. On all the time. And I have a desk job. So I sit at my desk, review stuff, read stuff, write stuff. So it's really a lot of downtime. And I'm like, Jay, we can make a podcast because there's nobody else out there that is really doing this from a high stakes perspective. And I think that's for one of two reasons. One, with Dynasty and Redraft, you get a lot of content out there where people tell you what to do. But I've found a lot of people in those spaces, they aren't out there grinding and playing. I'm in 60 Dynasty leagues on top of it, but I'm on the front lines. I'm a player. I'm not a podcaster. I am a player. I would give up all the podcasting, the Twitter follows, all of that to be a player at heart.
Yeah.
And a lot of you don't see that in high stakes, and that's because, no offense to any of the high stakes podcasts out there, most of the people that are behind the scenes winning, they aren't podcasting. Yeah. They aren't out there announcing what they're doing to win 6 figures every year in high stakes. Now, they may have a website or they may do something where they're getting paid for it. They're consulting people, but they're not out there doing a podcast going, okay, here's our strategy. Let's do it.
Here's inside our minds.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, part of it started, I don't want to take the origin story too far, but part of it started in the first year when we went to Vegas. We knew we had a draft. It's a funny story. We knew we had a draft against the ship chasing, Pat Corain and Peter Overzet.
Oh, there you go. There's one of the other influential bands.
Well, they didn't know me from anybody else. Yeah. They didn't follow me on Twitter, nothing. But I listened to their entire show, and I knew we were in a draft 2 spots away from them. And lo and behold, I knew everybody they liked. I mean, I knew they were connected with RotoViz and established the run. Like, I knew kind of where they ran the circles and, the players they liked and their strategy.
Yeah.
But we sat there and, picked off player after player after player that they wanted. And they started looking over at us like, who the hell is this guy? And we're reaching on players 2 or 3 rounds in front of them.
Yeah.
Just to take their guys. Now, it still fit within our strategy, but that's when I started to realize, Jay, we can do a podcast and we can be somewhat entertaining. I do think our banter back and forth has gotten better over the episodes where I'll give Jay a hard time and he'll do it back to me. But
yeah, that's great.
We can do a podcast. We don't give away our strategy, but we're not scared to go in and literally talk about our drafts and maybe what we did or what we want to do in the future.
Yep.
fantasy football is all about making bets.
Yeah.
None of us are great at predicting player outcomes. We're trying to spot trends, especially when we're playing in leagues where there's 96 players, or in the main event, thousands of players, or in football, guys, tens of thousands of players. There's luck, there's variance, there's correlation, all that stuff that goes into it. So who cares if we're in one draft and we maybe give away a couple players we like? We'll hedge our bets and go the opposite way. So I think we've created a show where we can talk about our drafts, talk about our strategy, but somebody can't just listen to it for 4 episodes and be like, I got these guys pegged. I'll be able to beat their ass every single draft. So we'll end it there.
I like it. Was that the year that the ship chasing boys were still wearing their red 4-for-4 shirts? Was that the same year? Or am I misremembering a year there? Maybe not.
That was the year that was the year that they were in Vegas, and Pat Carrain had the absolute infatuation with Ronald Jones and Will Fuller. Those were the two guys.
Yeah.
And it was 2 years ago.
Oh,
so it was when ship chasing just first launched. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. I remember one year
and they were doing one.
Overset was there in like bright red 4-for-4 football shirts. I didn't know if that was.
And they were doing one main event, only one live main event, and we were 2 spots away from them at the live draft table.
Sniping them. Nice. No, I like that. Thank you for sharing that origin story. That was great. So let's segue into our draft, and let's call it the draft origin story for the one that we did. And I think it's important to note, right, the couple of rules about what's different between Kentucky and FFPC, right? It's 3 wide receivers, start 3 wide receivers, and premium. I think that'll be important to go through as we work through this. And then I think a couple of its main features, it's a 3rd round reversal, which is interesting. And then you auction for your draft slots. Now, again, before we go into the auction, because I do want to talk about that, because that's kind of, our draft's origin story. The interface, looks exactly like FFPC. So just like a plug to Kentucky, if you're comfortable with the FFPC interface, it's great. Looks the same. I think it even threw a couple people off in our mentions earlier today who were mortified at the draft board that they saw.
I saw that.
That they think that there was like a 312 DK Metcalf, which is all fine, right? Like, seeing a draft board in Kentucky out in the wild with no context, right? Maybe you're just like, absolutely stunned. So let's talk about now that we've got the Kentucky rules out of the way, let's talk about the auction. You do start every draft with an auction strategy. I'll kind of give a recap of your own, right? I think your first draft, you guys were early in the draft. I don't think you spent a lot of money, but this past draft, I was in that auction with you guys, and you guys had a plan. What were you shooting for? What did you guys end up getting? And then what were you angling for with that draft strategy?
Well, when we went in, we were discussing, first of all, I love the process bidding on the draft slots. I think that's a blast. But we were looking at 9 or 10 slot. And the thinking was, if Tyreek Hill falls to us, possibly at 9, we're going to take him. We were going to start off 0 RB, go 3 wide receivers in a row. If not, then we knew definitely we could bag Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
Okay, and he would be our first wide receiver. And then from there, we would just pick off the best wide receivers that are available for the next 3 rounds. So we got spot 9 for, I believe, $50, which, that comes off our fab. So we have $950 left, for the year, which I mean, we're ecstatic to get that spot, for that amount of money.
Yeah, I don't know how it went in your first auction, but it was about how I expected it. I think I meant to look it up, but I think that the first or the middle 5, maybe like 4 through 8 went for $10 and ours. And it wasn't, it was the ends that spiked upwards again with that 3rd round reversal of that 12 spot being pretty heavy.
The first one we didn't really have a draft slot because it was our first one, and we knew we were going to play multiple checkered flags.
Yeah,
the checkered flags is 8 drafts, 12 teams, so we're probably going to have multiple shots at trying to get into this tournament. So we wanted to have a plan after we did our first draft to have a different team the second time. But Jay and I were both in the first draft. What happens is the first couple slots, people that want to pick at the beginning, that want to get Barkley or Kamara or McCaffrey or whatever, they get bidded on.
Yep.
And then 4, 5, 6, 7, all of those, nobody wanted them. Nobody bid.
Yep. Yeah, that was great.
And so we were literally the last ones to get our slot. And they're like, Okay, 104 is left. You get it for $10. So we took 104, and then we go, okay, well, we had 104. We liked our team. Let's do the symmetrical opposite and go with the 109.
Yeah.
So there you go. We targeted the 109.
Nice.
The rest is history. You can see.
Knowing you have to pay a little bit for it. A little bit more than 10, but 50 is.
Right.
I mean, I could easily blow $50 on, but who was the Sample guy last year? What was this? Drew Sample. I blow $50 easy on Drew Sample, so I might as well save me for myself. No, it's funny that you guys got the last draft slot in your first draft, or I guess 4 slot, but last person to actually, secure their spot. Same thing with me on this one. I pushed some money around. I made some bids, but ultimately I said, well, hey, I'm cocky and I'm sure of myself, but I don't know if I'm that sure of myself where I need to be spending up a third of my fab, a quarter of my fab on this. So, I did end up, I think 6 and 7 were available, and did say, okay, I think I'd rather 7 than 6, and we can talk about that too. But I just absolutely love the auction start to these drafts. That was fun.
Yes, we do too.
So you guys got 9. I'll just go with mine. And maybe we can. I'll go with why I liked 7 over 6, and then I kind of want you guys to kind of walk through your draft and we kind of start reviewing the boards from here. I liked 7 because in my mind I like 6 running backs. I don't like Zeke, so I actually said you mentioned Hill. I was going to go if Jonathan Taylor had gone in that 6th spot. So the running backs went off the board, and actually I should share the draft board. I know you guys have shared the board on Twitter, and of course we can add it to the Twitter, the tweet once we release the show. But the 6 running backs went McCaffrey, Cook, Barkley, Kamara, Henry. And if Taylor had gone 6, I absolutely would have gone AJ Brown. Now, you guys went AJ Brown. I would have gone AJ Brown over Tyreek Hill. I know that's not the most popular opinion. I like him a lot this year, but you guys ended up getting him in the 2nd round. So why don't you work through, ended up, what happened with your 9th spot, kind of where you guys started going, and we can maybe talk a little bit about, AJ Brown and what that would have meant if I had sniped him from you guys, sniped air quotes, if Jonathan Taylor had been taken away from me.
You want me to take that, Scott?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I can take it. We planned on getting Diggs, and then we did talk about the 2 more receivers start after that, because we noticed in the Kentucky draft, every league that I'm in, dynasty, redraft, whatever, I run what's called a scoring matrix, and it's supposed to give you relative positional value to each one of the starting spots. And when you run it for one of these Kentucky drafts, you have an extra receiver. So 3 of your 8 starting spots that are not defense or kicker are considered receivers. So core positions. And then you have no tight end premium. And then the quarterback scoring relative to, some crazier leagues is pretty limited. So essentially, the receivers, the optimal build is to start 4 receivers every single week. And so we figured let's go 3 receivers, because what happens with this 3rd round reversal is teams hit those receivers really hard. So the receivers you typically see in round 3 through 6 of an FFPC draft are going off the board in the first 4.5 rounds of these Kentucky drafts, because the tight ends are falling. The quarterbacks are falling, not because they score any differently, but just because relative positional value, they're a little bit lower because of the demand for the receivers. So we're going 3 receivers, and then we'll worry about running backs. We didn't really go any further than that. And the names we had in mind were Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen in round 3. Now, what happens is in these live drafts, you don't know what the board's going to look like. So we executed the plan. Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown. We knew we'd be able to get A.J. Brown at that spot, most likely. So then we're going 3rd round reversal. They're going to eat up all the running backs, right? But CEH falls in our lap.
Yeah.
And so we immediately pivot on the clock. We plan on taking 2 more receivers after that to make up for it and keep an eye on the quarterbacks. But then it comes back around, and we're like, you know what? There's still 4, 5, 6 receivers we like. So we're going to take Josh Allen. So what was supposed to be a 3 or 4 receiver start turned into a 2 receiver CEH Josh Allen start.
Yeah.
But I still love the upside that we got with the rest of our receivers too. So that I think the benefit is picking at the end of these 3rd round reversal drafts with the extra demand for the receivers. To me, if you can get that spot, I mean, and you're in a good spot too. The second half of that draft, you could have started Tyreek Hill. I know you went running back, but the second half of these drafts, I think, are really primed for the format. So I don't know, I don't know if we'll be able to pay up much to get a 101, 102, 103.
No,
I
yeah.
don't love the Billies that much.
I agreed. And maybe Scott, to pivot there too, like thinking about the episode's big idea of translation from Kentucky to FFPC. And I think that you were hitting on it, but let me ask you, related to your draft, do you guys do many of these, call it running back fragile bids? I don't want to call it zero RB or modified, just like, more fragile running back, or is that like a true function of the three wide receivers, the start three wide receiver, third round reversal? Was that just like a total function of this format? Like what's translatable, at least from your overall strategy? And then, you don't have to give a ton here. We can talk about that, as we progress through reviewing the teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is last year, anybody that listened to our podcast, we were very much the heavy RB early,
yes,
which a lot of people were. I mean, that was the craze. It's still the craze now, but I think the difference is what we saw last year was the fragility at running back was exposed.
Yep.
It was also exposed at receiver. There were a lot of receivers that went early last year that didn't deliver as well. I chronicled this on my Dynasty show, I've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years now. Wide receiver in the NFL there are alphas and then there are everybody else's, and the everybody else's can give you 1, 2, 3, up to 4 or 5, 6 top end weeks a year.
Yeah.
But the further down you go, the harder it is to predict. So our flaw last year was we went into it going, you know what? Receivers are hit or miss. We can find receivers in round 10, round 12, round 14. They exist. But the flaw was in a shallower format like this, when it's not best ball, we found ourselves last year, and it was a bad year for the running back fragility because a lot of them got hurt. A lot of them didn't produce. We found ourselves, and I know I'm being long-winded, but I think this is a test to our strategy this year. We went really heavy running back, which is fine. You can do that. You can go 3 running backs and still build a great receiver core. But we made 2 mistakes. One, last year we went too heavy on running backs, and that cost us with some of the big waiver wire pickups.
Yeah.
We go, we don't need James Robinson. We don't need Mike Davis. We don't need Myles Gaskin, because you know what? We have David Montgomery as our 4th running back. And our 3rd was Leonard Fournette. And our 2nd was Melvin Gordon. We don't need to spend fab on a running back. We're good. Now, so that I think that cost us by going, we don't need these guys. When the truth is, I don't care if you have 4 or 5 good running backs. You should always put in a competitive bid on the one that hits the wire. That's the first thing.
Get a forum.
Exactly. And the second thing was, and I'll throw this to Jay, because I was I started playing back 7 or 8 years ago, and it was all about the late round quarterback. You can stream quarterback, which in theory it can work. But again, because we started off last year with a bunch of rosters where we were holding 2 or 3 quarterbacks planning to stream, we never really chased the upside of the Ryan Tannehills when he hit waivers, or Justin Herbert when he hit waivers. Whereas the team that only went 1 running back or 1 quarterback, and maybe they got COVID or maybe they got hurt, they might have been more apt to make the pickup that we just said, oh, no, we're good. We have Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. Let's just stream. We'll hit a top 10 quarterback every week. Yeah. And how wrong were we? So it was a combo of poor roster construction, and also we went too heavy on certain players. And so it's changed our strategy this year. So, Jay, I know I dominated that, but any thoughts?
No, I'll just add to that. You're right, Scott. We hit 2 roadblocks last year. And you remember our Saturday nights. Because we took RBs like maybe 4 or 5 in the first 10 rounds, we were taking the receivers after round 10. And we had a hell of a time trying to decide who to start sit between our wide receivers. And we were wrong 50% of the time. I mean, we couldn't outguess ourselves. The second roadblock was exactly what you said. We had waited to take our 2 quarterbacks later after round 10, and then we wanted to stream. Again, we were about 50% wrong, 50% correct. You don't win tournaments, you don't win championships that way. So those were the 2 roadblocks. So this year, we're looking to plug and play, Andrew. Yeah. We're looking to plug and play. We don't want to sit there on a Saturday night and do 25 teams waivers and take 3 hours deciding, looking at the weather conditions, whatever. We're not going to play anybody over Stephon Diggs or A.J. Brown or Kenny Golladay.
Yep.
It's plug and play. Then the last 10 rounds, we can come back and add depth. And then, and like in this draft, and Scott agreed with me in this draft, that's why we took Ryan Tannehill in the 12th round, 13th round, I'm sorry. So, that's little wrinkles that we're putting into our strategy this year. Now, will we take 3-4 running backs in a main event? Absolutely, if the value falls to us, like Scott said.
Yep.
We're always going to chase the value, but we're looking more to plug and play and have those Saturday nights cut down to maybe an hour and a half. Decision makings and to start sit, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work when you play multiple leagues like Scott and I do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the other thing from like a translation perspective, at least that I noticed here, and I don't know what you guys' thoughts were, and I think maybe you saw it in your first draft too, is I was shocked at how many running backs went in round 2. Now, I took 2 running backs to start. I took Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon to start. I was happy with that. And maybe it was just people thinking, maybe Scott, hey, there's going to be alphas that fall later. I've got this 3rd round reversal. I can go ahead and start, multiple running backs, and maybe I still get one of my wide receivers. I was just shocked with like the start 3 wide receivers. And again, part of the problem here, that not that many wide receivers were flying off the board in round 2. Did that shock you in either draft, or is that just like going back to like, hey, the running backs are always going to dominate, and if people think that they can get 2 studs, they'll always start with 2 studs.
Well, I think the Kentucky rules dictates a different type of draft than the FFPC. And remember, just like you, Andrew, this was your first draft in the KFFSC.
Yeah.
This was our second, so we're still learning. They have pros in there. I think in the first draft, I read off all the veterans we were up against, 15 years, 10 years, 8 years experience. We got to get our stuff together right away, because we're in 4 big payback leagues. Those are $1,000 a piece live in Kentucky at the end of August. So that's why we're going to do 2 more checkered flags, add that in to get more practice.
Get the reps under the belt.
Yeah, exactly. Just to figure out, what everybody's doing on a consensus. Because you're right, there is no Fantasy Mojo. Shout out to him. That's ADP right. That you can go buy or whatever. Just your latest draft board. So I think
the one thing to add to that is these Kentucky drafts. The wild cards there's a couple running backs that can be wild cards. Miles Sanders was certainly a little bit of a surprise in this draft, jumping up, into the mid to late second.
Yeah.
I think the wild cards in these Kentucky drafts, which can literally sway your strategy one way or the other, is essentially who is going to suck it up and take the tight ends. Pretty much that's it. I mean, you can be sitting. Look at George Kittle. He went at the 312. You could see a draft where Kelsey falls early mid-second and Waller and Kittle go in the late 3rd, which is going to hit. It's going to hit a couple of those receivers and running backs higher than expected. But this draft, Waller went 210. That's probably what pushed Clyde Edwards-Helaire to us. That one pick
nailed it.
Could have pushed him, and you could see Miles Sanders going behind Edwards-Helaire and Waller going behind Edwards-Helaire in one of these drafts. That literally probably pushed one player to us that wouldn't have been there. So I think the tight ends, FFPC, Waller, Kittle, Kelsey are gone in the first 18 picks, 20 picks. Not here. These tight ends can go round 3 or round 4. And I know us, we didn't even talk tight end. We literally, they weren't on our board unless it was like, oh my God, Waller's there in the 4th round. Let's take him. So, if you're in a draft against us, if you're thinking tight end, there's probably a lot of people thinking the same way, where it's like, hey, I can get some tight ends if I want to go that way.
Yep. And I do want to talk tight ends. I think the one other thing that I noticed that like may be translatable, because I know you guys hit this and I think you guys already alluded to it, is the stacking. This is a limited run tournament, 96 teams. We talked about it, 8 drafts, 12 teams each. You guys stacked the Diggs Allen. And then, of course, I set myself up for potentially getting Dallas with the CeeDee Lamb pick in the 3rd, but ultimately just decided to go super Browns stack. And waited a little bit for Joe Burrow, but ultimately decided to pull the trigger maybe a round or 2 before I thought he should go. But just to make sure that if I'm going to do a stack, I'm going to do it right and I'm going to get him. So you guys got the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and then I went with the Burrow, Mixon, and T. Higgins. In these tournaments, stacking still translatable across formats?
I think so. I think everybody, looks to do that. I don't know if it's achievable. But this is only 96 teams. Like Scott said, it's not 1,000 teams, 10,000 teams, 8,000 teams. We did a double stack. You know, we stacked Tannehill with AJ Brown and Frisker, and that's a backup stack. You know, I kind of talked Scott into that. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, I mean, he threw for over 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and he ran 7 touchdowns in last year. Round 13 as your backup, I mean, we couldn't pass that up. So he agreed with me. So I don't think he would have if we would not have had AJ Brown or Frisker. But yeah, we actually did a double stack, which actually rounded out the team. I mean, I think it really gave our team a more competitive chance in this league.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I think this has been something that I've been talking about Dynasty this year too, is with the ascension of these quarterbacks. One of my strategies, and we didn't necessarily do it here because Josh Allen's obviously a high-end quarterback.
Yep.
But I do think that stacking, it can add anywhere from like 3 to 5% in a given week to your head-to-head game. Now, in some of these tournaments where it's total points or there's different rules, it can matter more or less. But essentially, when you're in a head-to-head game, and especially when you get into like the main events, especially, if you can, even if you finish 200th in the main event, if you win your league, finish in first place with most points, and you win it, you've basically paid for half your entry fees of all your other leagues if you sweep your league. So to me, that's something that we shoot for. Anything else is a bonus. When you're playing high volume, Jay and I don't play high enough volume to go against some of these guys that have 300, 400, 500 entries, that they're going to hit on a team that has the nuts, that has our stack, and they probably have 2 other things we don't have. But I think there is a strategy. We had a great discussion in our Dynasty Patreon channel about this. You can elevate some of these lower end quarterbacks that you may be forced to use by stacking. So I love stacking, Allen and Diggs. This guy in this draft got Kyler in the 6th round to stack with Hopkins. To me, that's an even bigger steal. I mean, but I think if you end up stacking, if we have Tannehill and Brown and Ferkser in 1 week, you can elevate a Tannehill already with that additional 2 or 3 or 5%. You can actually elevate Tannehill from his top 12 to top 5 or 6 relative to the rest of your team. So I actually like stacking some of the, middle tier quarterbacks. So I love the Burrow stack. He's a perfect quarterback that probably isn't a top 5 or 6 guy on his own, but he's got 3 options that you can pivot from round 4 to round 8 or 9 and get a Burrow stack. And I actually like maybe more in football guys and main event. CJ Uzama is a guy that's not getting drafted, but I actually like him as well as just the same type of stack as Ferkser. So I think you can elevate some of the quarterbacks and not have to pay if you want to do it that way.
Andrew, I have to ask you a question. Your only quarterback was Joe Burrow. Did you contemplate taking a second one, or you just punted it, or you intended?
So, Jay, I don't know if you were reading that. We talked a little bit before we got on about reading the chats. You guys talked about you're asking of Farrell the rules or working through the rules on your first live draft. I messaged the chat and I said, point of clarification for the idiot who didn't read the rules. Is there a fab waiver run before the start of the season? Farrell in every draft says, yes, there's a fab waiver run. And Jay, once I got that green light mid-draft, there was not even a thought to take a second quarterback.
Okay.
Now, I think that this is put it in the I could be uncomfortable situation. Look, if I have Burrow and my back's against the wall, I know that I'm going to need to be aggressive, right, on the waiver wire, and I can make those moves. And I think that when we start getting in the thick of it, and again maybe week 1, I just need to make sure that there's some players available, and I think that there were, as I look at the board and try to remember who's maybe there's a Wentz, which I know is a chasing the helmet pariah, but he's available, and then obviously right as the season progresses, and bye weeks hit, injuries hit, I don't think that every team, unless they're super dedicated, is going to be able to hold on to all their roster spots. So I think if needed, I can always find something on the waiver wire, especially if my back's up against the wall. But no, it's funny you asked that, Jay. I absolutely had to ask the chat just to make sure that I knew the rules and that I was good to go for week 1, just in case Joe Burrow is not.
You see, this is where Scott and I are at odds too. The second quarterback, Scott agrees with you. One quarterback, you take him that high. That's it. I look at it a different way with the injury-riddled NFL season. It seems that every year it's more and more. I like to get that second quarterback just to back up, especially if you can get value for him. But the Joe Burrow injury doesn't scare you? You think he's going to come flying right out of the gate and pick up where he did last year? I mean, I'm thinking Ryan Tannehill, Josh Allen. I mean, later in the season, Josh Allen could be playing in a foot of snow in Buffalo.
Yeah.
It will be happy to have Ryan Tannehill throwing to AJ Brown and Fursker, in that lineup. But if you don't go and do that or pursue that second quarterback, you don't have that option or depth. So that's the reason I asked you. I mean, that's a great answer.
I like being over the summers. I like being fragile. I don't mind maybe closer to main event time, potentially looking at that second quarterback like late. But over summer, and again, I don't think June is technically summer, but here in May, June, I am wanting to have as many running back and wide receiver dart throws as possible. And I want to skip having the second quarterback, especially when I know that there's a week one waiver run if anything bad happens to my onesie positions.
So here's the thing, I actually agree with you, Andrew.
Of course.
Here's the evidence.
I mean, he set himself up, right?
He did. There were 21 quarterbacks drafted in this league. Now, do the math. That's 11 quote-unquote starters that will be taking the field opening day that are not on rosters right now. Here's the other thing. We're coming off a historic quarterback class. Some of these drafts, you have Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance getting drafted. That is 2 or 3 other guys that may not start right away as well.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that you shouldn't take a second quarterback, but I agree with your idea. Look what you did at the back 3 picks. Devontae Booker, an injury-away guy behind an injury-prone running back coming off an ACL surgery. I like Devontae Booker. Love that pick. LaMichael Pirine in a completely ambiguous backfield. He's an easy drop if he's 4th on the depth chart when they break camp. Easy drop, but he could be the starter. He could be the backup. And then Samaje Pirine, same thing. So you took 2 one injury-away running backs, and there's 11 quarterbacks, if not more, available for you to pick up one. So I think Jay and I are still working through this.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. With COVID last year, on main event teams, you had people holding 4 or 5 quarterbacks. Going, you know what? 2 of my guys could be canceled because of COVID. 1 guy could be on a bye. So Jay and I did it. We had 4 quarterbacks on every team. So if you were looking to the waiver wire like you should be in a 12-team, 1 quarterback league, there should be at least 5 or 6 bodies available. Last year, in the last half of the season, none. Maybe the dregs that you didn't want to play, but that's it. So I think we have to readjust and recalibrate a little bit. And I personally, if I'm going to take a second quarterback this year, it's Trey Lance in the 19th, Justin Fields in the 5th. To me, those guys have home run ceilings. I would much rather do that than take a Ben Roethlisberger in the 18th.
Yeah.
Well, that type
of, when you have Mahomes, to me, that pick made no sense.
I would too. But Scott, we are in agreement. The reason we did take Tannehill was because of the triple stack with Brown and Fursker and Josh Allen's week off. Tannehill is playing against the Chiefs, which is a high-scoring game. So all of the stars align for you to agree. Okay,
there's a method to the Tannehill pick. I don't think the method is something we will follow in every draft. Hey, once it gets to round 12, we're looking for a second quarterback. I agree with Andrew's strategy. If I had my choice all the time and it wasn't a specific player. Tannehill, yes, I agree. So we agree, Jay.
Andrew, you get to agree on your show. Wow.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad. See, I opened saying that there's going to be some therapy involved. So I'm glad somebody got some therapy. No. I mean, and we'll close out right with the stacking is, actually, as I look at the board and should have noticed it before, team 3 stacked Dak with Amari. Team 4 stacked Stafford with Woods. Team 6 Russell with Lockett. Team 7 I did the Bengals stack. Team 8 did Goddard and Hurts as like a little mini one. You guys obviously had a couple different stacks in there. Team 11 did Herbert and Eckler, which I thought was really interesting. And then as you guys mentioned, I think that you guys were hitting it pretty hard on your pod. Your live draft pod is Team 12. Going after Kyler and when he would do that. So, a lot of stacks here. I think that everyone's seeing the value in those stacks. And Scott, I think that you're calling attention to it in terms of the elevation of maybe not the elite quarterback there, even though we mentioned a couple. One other thing before I wanted to hit on before, maybe we talk about our teams and move on to some other segments. You guys talked about tight ends. Now, I waited on tight ends. I took my first Noah Fant in the 9th round. I like Noah Fant. I think he's in that tier. I think, Goddard and Logan Thomas went in the same round. Okay, perfect. But then Tyler Higbee was available in the 11th round. And I'm not a big Higbee guy. I don't think I needed a second tight end. And I think you guys even called attention to it. Okay, first team to take 2 tight ends. I just thought where we were in like that call it the wide receiver dead zone, right? When you have a bunch of these guys that maybe give you good best ball wide receivers, call them. I just thought it'd be more interesting to have that, that safety, call it, at a onesie position. What did you guys think about that? Because obviously in this particular draft, you guys really punted tight end. I mean, you guys waited to the 15th, 16th round to go back to back on yours. But there I was in non-tight end premium taking 2 tight ends right there in the 9th and the 11th.
Well, 3 tight ends came off the board. We were looking at tight end in round 12 as well. But when Ingram, Tanyan, Gesicki, you took Higbee, Irv Smith went off, we discussed it, if you listen to the podcast, that now all of the remaining tight ends, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're all pretty much in the same tier.
Yep.
Okay. So why reach for one at that point? So, I mean, we didn't take our first tight end till round 15, and then we followed up with Kmet in 16. So I think that was a good move to us. I mean, that we decided to do. Because then when we did that, then all the other tight ends came off. But don't you agree, Scott? I don't think any of the others were head and shoulders above the 2 that we chose.
No, and we maybe were a little bit jaded from our first draft too, where we saw Austin Hooper went to waivers. That's a player that, and it's not even that I necessarily like Austin Hooper, but he's a player that goes to waivers in these drafts. And so, I kind of look at some of the names that are available, there's some risk with a couple guys. One of the sexy picks for us this year has been Cole Kmet, but there is some evidence to say a lot of these second-year tight ends that people maybe elevate because the expectation with a rookie tight end is let's just see him get on the field. That's it. If a rookie tight end gets on the field and they earn snaps and they earn the trust of the quarterback and the coaching staff, to me that's a win. But then a lot of times we elevate these guys into, okay, well, their role is going to expand 20 or 30% because now they're sophomores. And they kind of can go on a little bit of a lull for a couple years. But the tight end shelf life, the prime for a tight end is like 26, 27, 28 years old. So sitting here drafting, 22-year-old tight ends, well, he's a second-year player. He's got to get 30% better, right? It doesn't always happen. So I think there is some risk with, the Irv Smith from last year or Kmet and Adam Troutman from this year. Especially in a non-premium league, if I can spend a 20th round pick and maybe sacrifice a little upside, but then take a guy that realistically may just be a placeholder in round 14, I think we can diversify in that range. So we probably will look to get some different tight ends. And there may be a draft where we don't take any until the very end, just for that same reason. Totally different than football guys or main event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People hoard them just because. And actually the math in a 1.5 PPR league, it actually doesn't support flexing tight ends outside of the top 7 or 8. But people still take them like, oh, hey, I can flex the tight end 20. It's like, no, that's not optimal. But people still draft them that way. So you do have to get them or you punt.
That's somebody who got caught in a running back pinch. Oh, okay. I could just throw out a tight end thinking he's the starter. I luck into 7 catch day or whatever.
Or you took all my running backs, so I'm going to punish you and draft 4 tight ends.
Now that happens a lot in the main event. We call it defensive drafting, or catchback drafting, whatever you wanted to call it.
All right. Well, let's move on. We'll kind of continue to review our teams for these next couple of questions. Call this one the nervous tummy segment. I have one for you guys. So I'm okay to kick off if you want me to. Was there a particular spot in this draft where you guys hated where you were at, that you got stuck? Maybe somebody sniped you. It was like your most gut wrenching, again, nervous tummies, as I'll call it, decision point in your draft. Anything that came to mind for either of you guys?
Well, for me, I just mentioned it. It was the tight end. I wanted a tight end in the 12th round. And Scott said, no, we're punting. And I was on him to grab a tight end. So they were just gobbled up. We didn't expect that many to go.
Mm-hmm.
Scott may have another spot, but it's round 12 for me on the tight end situation.
No, I mean, if you listen to the podcast, that was exactly the spot. I think we went down to the last 2 seconds on that pick, and we took Rashad Penny. And
yes.
We went all the way down to the bottom. Eric was on this draft with us. He was chiming in. All of us were looking in different directions. And you hit it earlier, Andrew. Fragility in the summer, because especially knowing the quarterbacks and tight ends that fall to waivers in these leagues, the biggest bump you can get equity-wise would be at a running back position. And we kind of sacrificed the pick before. I lobbied for Rashad Bateman because people fade Rashad Bateman. I think he probably moves up in terms of where he's going to go as we get more towards the season. But if you could tell me there's a rookie, and Jay and I did it last year, we had T. Higgins, Chase Claypool. We had those guys on teams, and when they don't fire right away, you drop them, and they go to waivers, and other people profit later on in the year. But I think we got stuck because I don't like drafting more than one running back like a Naheem Hines, J.D. McKissick. I don't like loading up on those guys, and we already took Hines.
Little satellite backs. Yeah. You can't just like stick 4 of them in the middle of those. Yeah.
Exactly, because you really never want to have to play 2 of those guys at once.
Yeah.
You want them just to be a placeholder when you need to throw somebody in. Yeah. And so, that's why we took Penny. We didn't really have him on our board, but we kind of looked at it and said, coming off an injury, he's risky, but I think he's probably better than what he's shown in the NFL thus far. And he is an injury away from probably having a much higher ADP. So that's why we went there.
That's right. Yeah, I like the Bateman pick. Of course, I had his counterpart only 4 rounds earlier when I took Hollywood Brown in the 7th. But I like seeing that block of yellow there. That made me feel happy. So another Raven, and you guys touched on this, but I want your thoughts because my biggest nervous tummy spot in the draft. So I go Taylor Mixon, I go CeeDee Lamb. It's start 3 wide receivers. We've talked a lot about these points, so it's all one song, right? It's the alphas. At 4, what is this? 4 must be 7. I'm up. T. Higgins is there, but J.K. Dobbins has fallen. So you guys have a plan. And again, I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder. You guys had this Josh Allen plan. Hey, we're going to take Josh Allen. We're going to stack. But then J.K. Dobbins kept falling. So he falls to me, call it first, of us, or I guess only of us, because he was taken with the next pick. Interested to see what you guys would have done if you were in my shoes. And then I kind of want to know what you guys would have done in your shoes. But I'll tell you where I landed was, again, I had T. Higgins. I had Jamar Chase. Those were my only 2 options. I ended up deciding T. Higgins because he had the alpha-like qualities last year. He's already in it. Totally agree with the Burrow-Chase connection with LSU. It can't be discounted. But I like Higgins there. I have a ton of Higgins this offseason. If you listen to any of my stuff, I'm just taking him wherever, trading for him in Dynasty, and got a huge T. Higgins problem. So I ended up going him because of the start 3 wide receiver. So question for you guys, did I get in my own head about the 3 wide receiver? And with my start, if you were in my shoes, would you have gone J.K. Dobbins to go with 3 running backs and really have to work for the wide receivers later on in the draft? So let me open it up there.
I think, Andrew, I just love that 5 wide receiver.
Yeah,
run. I mean, you got a lot of points there. I'm not a J.K. Dobbins fan, as Scott can tell you. I think it's a crowded backfield with Gus. But I probably would have done exactly what you did.
A wide receiver. Even if it's not Higgins, you would have gotten a wide receiver there over Dobbins.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
I think the conundrum, Andrew, is, you already started running back. So if you knew Dobbins would have been there in the 4th, you probably would have been, maybe
I go Ridley or Jefferson if I had known.
Exactly. You take a receiver in round 2. You can get Dobbins in round 4. My feelings on Dobbins are he's one of the most polarizing running backs. I think he's going to continue to be polarizing.
Yeah.
There's some minimum thresholds you have to hit to be a top 8 running back. It's hard to project him to hit any of those except for the ambiguous touchdowns and efficiency, which are hard to bet on.
Yep.
So he's polarizing. So he does fall in some of these drafts just because there may not be a Dobbins fan. So I think if you knew he was going to go there, you would have probably hit Ridley
or
Jefferson, been elated that you got Dobbins. you may have been able to come back around, because we actually were not going necessarily to take Josh Allen there. I wanted Josh Jacobs because I thought we'd be able to get Josh Allen.
Yeah. Oh, in the fifth.
And then we settled, you know what? People don't like Jacobs, even though he's averaged 260 touches a year for the last 2 years. I mean, he's going to get work. It's just nothing about his situation is fun. So no one likes him at this point. But we actually were banking on trying to get Jacobs on the way back, but it didn't work out. But I get it in this format, man. If you would have gone a third running back,
I think don't feel good.
You would have had to go 2 or 3 more receivers from round 8 to round 11, and they would have been names where you're going, when the hell do I start this guy?
Exactly.
So, I get it. I think
I like
stuck
what
to your
you
process.
did, Andrew. I like what you did.
Yeah, no, that was definitely my nervous tummy spot of the draft. If he was there in your pick, would you guys have had a debate, or maybe Jay makes it seem like that was like I'm going to put my foot down on that one?
No, we would not have taken Dobbins. But remember, our original strategy was to go wide receiver. So after we took Josh Allen, we got back on track and said Kenny Golladay. The gift, at least I think, a gift. Coming back in the 6th round, we landed James Robinson, 1,000-yard rusher, 7 touchdowns, 300 in the air. I mean, 3 more touchdowns in reception, 10 touchdown guy. And I don't know why he's dropping. I mean, I do know why. But, I mean, that was a gift to pair with CEH. That was perfect. Yeah. And the bye weeks were different. So, I mean, if you listen to our podcast, I mean, we were elated. We were very happy to get Robinson on the way back.
I would have lobbied for Dobbins only because I think we would have still got Josh Allen, and I am a massive Jerry Jeudy fan. So I look at this board and say, we could have had Dobbins, Jeudy in place of Golladay and James Robinson. That I might like that a little bit better, but that's not how it fell. We didn't want to take Carson or Jacobs. At least the consensus. There were 3 of us, and I got outvoted. Yep. So it landed how it did.
Well, we were thinking about rolling the dice, Scott, on Josh Allen and coming back and possibly get him in the 5th, because on the last board we had, he went 5-12. But we didn't do that. We wanted to secure him, but we could have done that, and we could have got the Dobbins. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I had the much lower stakes version of that, where I was like, well, I'll reach a little bit on Joe Burrow, but you guys did the same thing. It's like, well, if I want to do the stack, I might as well lock in the stack. Why risk it if you don't have to? Okay, well, hey, I know we're a little bit over, but just wanted to ask, is there anything else like about your team that you guys wanted to mention before we kind of get into our last couple segments, either about your team or any other like draft quirks that you saw now that we've had a couple of days to digest the board? Any nice game theory that you guys enjoyed while, of course, studying this and dissecting it?
I think we're still feeling the checkered flag format.
Yeah.
This is our only 2nd draft. Again, like I stated earlier, we have 2 more to go. So certainly we're going to go into those 2 with totally different strategies. And we'll be bidding, which is the nice thing about these leagues. They're not dealt to you. It's not computer generated. This is where you're going to draft. So it looks like maybe we'll be spending some money possibly for rounds 1 or 12, or at least looking for different rounds with best value. So I think that's our focus. And once we land those draft spots, and then our strategy would develop from there.
Awesome. All right. Well, so let's do these last couple segments. I like this one. This is the somebody knows something. This to me was like the Eno Benjamin last year award. We saw those sharps starting to take Eno Benjamin, and then everyone else followed suit, like the Lynn Bowden Award, where they ended up pushing their own way up to like the 14th, 15th, maybe even the 13th round. Was there a late round pick that caught your eye here that made you go, something like, hey, I may steal that, and of course give them the proper credit, going forward? And like I said, I'm happy to go first on this one, unless one of you guys wants to take it.
No, go ahead, Andrew. It's your podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I liked Frank Darby at the 2001, and funny enough, I never thought I would have gotten sniped on Frank Darby, and I don't think it's like a true snipe. He was in my queue. It was him and Samaje Perine, who I did take. But let me talk about Frank Darby, because I'm definitely like this pick. I'm copying in the future. Maybe I have to do like the 19th round now. But I like the idea of Frank Darby, especially if Julio Jones gets traded. He was the guy that Matt Waldman liked. I'm not smart enough to do my own rookie scouting. Matt Waldman does a good job. Matt Waldman was on him pre-draft. really interesting. Had him like a top 10 wide receiver. So that caught my eye. And then, of course, he's on the Falcons. Julio Jones gets traded. You could convince me easily that Russell Gage, just a guy, Zacchaeus, just a guy, a lot of just a guys behind them. And I could easily convince myself, trick myself, whatever you want to call it, that I could see, somebody stepping up and taking that wide receiver 2 role or even 3 role. Because in today's NFL, we're playing 3 wide receivers. I'm just really interested in that Frank Darby pick, and I want to be taking some kind of shots on those guys, especially as the more obvious or expected Falcons names trend a little bit higher in ADP. I want to sit back in the 19th and 20th and take Frank Darby. So I don't know if that caught you guys' eye. If what I said
makes sense.
Yeah, I could talk myself into a lot of things, and he's definitely somebody that I'm telling the story about.
I actually agree with you on the Falcons. I like Zacchaeus's analytical profile the best of the 3.
Okay.
But I do agree that there is some meat on the bone. It's interesting how everyone is all in on the Falcons right now. Obviously, we know Julio's going to most likely be gone. But, who steps up? I think right now in FFPC drafts, people don't like him because he got burned by him last year, but I think Hayden Hurst is being underdrafted. You look at his range of outcomes. I don't care about Kyle Pitts because there's a chance that him and Kyle Pitts' role does not really overlap all that much. So could Hayden Hurst get a cheap 85 targets? Now, it's nothing to write home about, but he's falling down below tight ends that you're not even sure are going to have roles in some of these drafts. So I like his value. I actually love the Devontae Booker pick. That's a guy he's very much like a poor man's Jamal Williams, to where he's an injury away guy that the team went out of their way to sign. And he never really got the kudos that he deserved in Denver because he came in, he kind of busted in his first year. And then, he came back, and the second year people were just off of him. And then Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay came in. So Booker was kind of just there for 3 years in Denver and got lost. So I actually like the Booker pick. And the other one is Elijah Mitchell for San Francisco.
Yeah.
He's going up boards because of the Jeff Wilson pick. I actually was on him before the Jeff Wilson injury because there's a pretty good chance Elijah Mitchell may not make the team and could end up somewhere else and might be the 3rd best running back on another depth chart. So I like getting shares of a guy like that. Maybe not now because he's going to go up in price and he's probably going to make the Niners roster, which at this point, that could be a bad thing if he's number 4. But I like those 2 especially. And then, John Brown, round 18. Wouldn't be shocked if he has 110 targets. And he's not sexy, but that's great value if you're looking. That's what chases people into these. Well, I can find receivers late. Yeah. That type of pick right there makes you think,
receivers.
John Brown could have 120 targets, and then you get into the season and you go, why do I have John Brown? But I like that pick, round 18. That's a great value.
Well, you nailed my guy, Scott. That was what I was going to say, John Brown.
And Christian Kirk, the same thing.
You guys got him. I like that.
We take Christian Kirk because he literally goes in the last 2 rounds, and it's like one injury away, and the offense is going to throw it 575 times. So he's going to be on the field a lot. Yeah,
on the Booker, Scott, I did have an existential crisis before I reached out to you guys, thinking, oh shit, because I think you guys took him in the first checkered flag. You mentioned at the top, sniping our picks and taking our picks. I knew that you guys liked him, but in fairness to me, I've also been taking him this offseason. So before I reached out to you guys, I was like, oh shit, and we're gonna have to talk about how I've been sniping their picks. So I did want to give you guys credit. I think in your first checkered flag, you guys snagged him. But for all the reasons, I mean, obviously you laid out. I love snagging Booker, especially how free he's been this offseason. All right, so last segment. Thank you guys. I appreciate Scott and Jay, you guys sticking around. I think we said 45 minutes. Obviously, we're a little over. That's okay. I think we've been doing great here. Last game, my favorite game. Having said that, feel a little bit bad because the Kentucky guys are so nice. Farrell's so nice. I hate being the new guy coming in and starting pointing fingers and calling people the rake. But it's show business, and we got a show to do. So we're going to play a segment. Who's the rake? as I say to the guests, you guys are more than welcome to say I'm the rake. That's easy. Great cop out. I mean, everyone will think you're a cop out is fine, though. You can say me if you want to be nice, or you can pick a team that you think is going to be the rake. Doesn't have to be the last place finisher. Just the fact that you just know right here, the second the draft is done, you know that team is not winning any money, and they definitely can't come back and complain about it. You guys want to start, or you want me to start?
You could start, Andrew.
All right. Let me start here. I had two teams in mind, but then I started thinking about it a little bit more. And I'm going to go, which is actually a great personal risk to myself, team 5. Couple reasons. One, they're basically going naked tight end, but didn't love that they snagged Hunter Henry as the fifth tight end off the board. You know, Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Andrews, Pitts, so 6. And then Hawkinson's still there. I had Hawkinson on my mind, but he takes Hunter Henry over Hawkinson, which I think is, especially a non-tight end premium, like way too early. So I thought that was interesting in a prime wide receiver spot, which I want to get to. Jay, you even said it when you guys were recapping the first board. I mean, I think Jamison Crowder, I think that he was the other one you guys were monitoring, him and Hooper. They went, they hit the waivers in that one. And then, he goes Crowder in round 9. We'll see about that, and not a whole lot of wide receiver depth. I think the thing that finally hit home for me, who's he going to start at, wide receiver week 1? He's got to do 3. He's got to start 3 wide receivers, Godwin, Chark. Okay. Obvious. But then he's got his remaining 4. He's going to go Waddle, Crowder, Mooney, or Marshall. I just think he's going to have 2 lineup decisions throughout the year, to fill that wide receiver 3 spot. Now, having said that, this is why I think he's just going to struggle all year. Obviously the waiver wire, that's going to be a benefit to him. Why this is an issue with me calling him out is he's my week 1 opponent. So I'm just absolutely ready for him to pick the right wide receiver 3 and just get dumped on week 1 and just have this who's the rake blow up all in my face. So anyways, I'm ultimately going team 5 for the reasons of I think the reach on tight end and then just the no sure thing as wide receiver 3. I think that's going to be a struggle all season. So you guys, your turn to be mean. Who's the rake in your opinion?
Well, I don't have a mean streak in my body, so I'm gonna. My wife would disagree with that, but I think the best team in the league is Number Cruncher 6. I think our team and your team, Andrew, definitely in the top 4. But he got that 6 slot for $10, and he just sat back and just picked off the value as it came to him either way. The 3rd round reversal had no effect on him whatsoever. I like that he got Hawkinson, he got Russell Wilson, and he stacked it with Tyler Lockett. He's got Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Gibson, Allen Robinson. I mean, he's got his receivers are good. He stole Jamal Williams from us. He reached, I think, a little bit. He got him in the 10th. We were looking at Jamal in the 12th. Yeah, that was a pick I wish we would have had. I just all around. And he's got Justin Fields, who we had drafted in.
He's another listener who sniped you on the Justin Fields pick.
Yeah, and he stacked them with Allen Robinson. He did a chasing the helmet stack there. So is that Steve Cartwright, Number Cruncher? Kudos to him. I think he had a good draft. Now to go to back and put the mean streak back in place. I'd say team 3, good players, but there's question marks and possible injuries. The news with Barkley, is he going to come right out of the gate and start, or are they going to have him on a snap count? You've got Cortland Sutton. He's coming back from a pretty serious injury. Same thing, Dak Prescott, though we like Dak, but still, is he going to return to true form? Is he going to pick up where he left off last year? And just the backs. I mean, again, that's a decision. I know you start Barkley, but what if he has on a snap count? He has no really depth there with Drake, Fournette, and Harris. I mean, who are you going to start? It's a coin flip. So not to be mean, but I'd say team 3 for me, since you already took team 5.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Scott.
Yeah, I appreciate Jay starting it off with a nice thing. It's like when you're going to insult somebody, you give them a compliment first. Then the insult only hits a little bit, less hard than it would have. Yeah. It is interesting that team 3. I mean, that's Mr. Team ACL recovery. He's got Barkley, he's got Sutton, he's got Jarwin, and then you got other guys that, their names are synonymous with injury, with Fournette, Mike Williams, David Johnson, AJ Green, Deshaun Jackson. I mean, a lot of injury risk in there.
Too.
Yeah, a lot of guys in there that you're not really sure of. my team that I looked at this earlier and tried to figure out, okay, what team do I like the least? And I don't necessarily hate this team in terms of the players. I don't necessarily like the structure for the format.
Got it.
Team 10, Ballin' broke. Kelsey in the first round in this format. Someone's got to take him typically in the top half of the second round or earlier, but that's just not our cup of tea. We talked about that earlier. Aaron Jones, Keenan Allen, that's fine in round 2 and 3. Chris Carson in round 4. I think he maybe played that right, looking what the board showed to him, but at the same time, he might have been able to get Kareem Hunt or Montgomery there and gone with a receiver, especially given that his first receiver after Allen was Jamar Chase. But what I didn't like is I'm not a big fan of he paid up for a tight end in this format. He paid up for a quarterback, even though he got pretty decent value on Lamar. But you're taking the onesie positions that are not necessarily at a premium with the tight end here. And then his fourth running back was a handcuff. And then this is a 96-team tournament. And so, obviously Jay and I are playing in 3 or 4 of these leagues. But if I'm trying to win a tournament that's 96 teams, I would rather not handcuff my running backs, quite frankly. I would have rather pivoted off of taking another handcuff instead. Take a Jamal Williams or take somebody like that instead of a handcuff to Aaron Jones. Because I think he took a lot of risk with Kelsey in the first, and then you're stuck on both Green Bay running backs. What if Rodgers doesn't play? That's a lot of risk, and I think you're limiting your upside by handcuffing. So just roster construction. I love the Trey Lance pick in round 19, and I got to give this guy kudos. Antonio frickin' Callaway in round 18, coming back from the dead. There's going to be a relevant Chiefs receiver. There's like 7 of them right now that it could be besides, Hardman and Hill. So I love seeing Antonio Callaway. I got a kick out of seeing him picked in one of these leagues. So I'll give him kudos on that.
And you like the Elijah Mitchell pick. I think that it maybe said this way for Team 10, all the individual picks made sense, call it like in the proverbial vacuum. Right. But then when you look at it on a holistic basis, it was, maybe a little bit of just like for your taste, like the construction that was done.
And 3 rookie receivers as well. 3 rookie receivers as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, no, thanks. Thank you both for playing along with that. That's my favorite segment because, you got to call somebody out. And of course, anybody who gets called out as the rake is more than welcome to come on. We'll always have them on. Guys, this is great. I know we a little bit over what we expected. I really appreciate, you both hanging in and, the listeners, when they get to this in podcast form, you guys hanging in, really appreciate that. Scott, Jay, why don't you plug, what you guys want to do individually, of course, and then, would love to, hear the next steps in the chasing the helmet and what your schedule looks like and what you guys have already got in the bank.
Well, I addressed the schedule. Our next pod is this Friday night. It's going to be an FFPC football guy. So we're pivoting. It'll be our second football guy, but it'll be our first live pod for that draft. And then we're going to follow up the following week with our third football guy and our second football guy pod. And then we're going to pivot back to the checkered flag on the 20th. That will be a pod as well. And then on the 23rd, we're going to draft in a checkered flag, but it will not be a pod, but we have a special guest coming on 2 days later on Friday to recap, similar to what we're doing here, Andrew, sort of break it up a little bit so it's not always a live draft. So that's pretty much our focus and schedule for the month of June.
Yeah, and then we will be in Kentucky on the weekend of August 29th. We'll be drafting in 4 of the big paybacks there. Jay will be getting there and doing some other drafts as well before I get there. So we'll definitely be having some live content coming in the end of August. Live in Vegas. 8 main events between Jay and I, and Eric will be in there with a couple of us. Eric and I are doing an auction. Jay's doing a main event on his own. So we'll have plenty of drafts there in Vegas to, maybe meet up with some fellow players. So we'll have more live content. We want to bring more spontaneous stuff like we do with the live drafts. I think that's kind of where our niche is, and we want to continue that throughout the summer. So that's, what's on tap. And then July is basically wide open, right, Jay? Any challenges we get, any invites to other leagues or tournaments?
So far, we have not turned down any Twitter challenge. So if you want to challenge us to a football guy or whatever leagues out there, you name it, we usually will hop in and jump in and take you on.
well, how about this, Scott? What You guys are in the 750 auction on that Friday.
Yes, Eric and I will be under the Ohio Connection. We are doing that draft on Friday. Yep.
Switch into the 1250. I'm in the 1250 at that 9 a.m. That one needs to fill. Did the 750 already fill? Just move up to the 1250. Oh, okay.
Filled, yep.
All right. Fair enough. Just do a second one. No, I don't. Anyways.
Well, maybe you can. We'll definitely meet up. I may even come and look. Observe depending on our schedule. We have a tight schedule.
It might be going on at the same time. I think it's that 9 a.m. slot. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a tight schedule, but yeah, we'll definitely. It'll be cool to see you in Vegas. Being out there, that'll be cool.
I like it. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys both, Scott, Jay. This was awesome. Really appreciate the time. All right, guys. Let's sign off until the next Half Millie Billies. Be out there, and then LFG. Thank you both. See ya.
Thanks, Andrew.